Derek White is better than Trae Young. Trae Young is better at passing and scoring at volume, but he also turns the ball over a ton while also being not very efficient. Derek White is 10 times better at every aspect of defense, far less turnover prone, and is also more efficient. Time will tell if he will be more efficient with more volume. It's also pretty clear that Derek White would hold far more value in a trade scenario since the bidding war for him would include at least a dozen teams. I can agree with that last part just because like portability is a very important thing, and Derek White is in a situation where like every team in the league could use Derek White. There's no team that's like, oh no, we would hate to have Derek White on the roster, or we couldn't make Derek White work on this roster, but like you have a point guard already. You don't really have much use in Trae Young, and a lot of teams already have a point guard that they feel confident in enough that they don't want to go and get Trae. So that is more of a semantics thing, not even necessarily about strictly value, not to mention actual value. Derek White is on a much cheaper contract than Trae Young as well, but it's about roles, right? Like if Trae Young was the third best player on the okay, if we're in a scenario where Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to take the same amount of shots they're going to be by far and away the number one and number two option on the on the Celtics, then yeah, I would rather have Derek White than Trae Young in that scenario. But if we're talking about one guy has to lead a team, give me Trae Young in that scenario. Like, I do think Trae Young is a better player than Derek White. Like, I don't even really think it's close. I understand your argument that he's a better defender and he's more efficient, but the only reason he has that improved efficiency is because of the context in which he plays. Like you mentioned even here, like we'll see if his efficiency holds up with more volume. I guarantee it won't. He's not going to be as efficient as he was the last couple of years when he's taking 4 or 5 more shots per game. That's just not how it works. When you start shooting the ball more, you necessarily start taking more bad shots. That was something that was like vaguely controversial, not really, in my Wemby video where I was like, yeah, he's going to reduce his 3-point volume and his 3-point percentage will go up. And it's like, why would just taking one less a game necessarily mean he makes more? Well, it's because the 1 or 2 less threes you take per game would be not the dumb bad ones, not the heavily contested 20 feet behind the line with the shot clock at halfway, down type shot. You know what I mean? Like, Derek White will take more bad shots. He will make more risky passes than he ever did in his career this season. And Trae is in a situation where he has to make diamonds out of shit. And he has to make this team work despite the fact that it really doesn't. So he puts up these numbers that, yes, the efficiency's not that great, but also who the fuck else is going to shoot the ball? So no, I don't think Trae Young is better, or I don't think Derek White is better than Trae Young. Do you want to say in certain contexts he is? Absolutely. But just blanket face value? No, he is not better than Trae Young. That is, I really like Derek White. I love being like, yeah, impact over stats, but sometimes there's a reason one player has a boisterous stats and the other person has more impact. It's because, well, Derek White has the luxury of being a subtle impact without crazy stats guy, while Trae Young has to be the crazy stats with kind of rough efficiency guy given the context of his team. Third option, give me Derek White. Second option, give me Trae Young every fucking day of the week. If Trae Young is going to be the second guy on my team, I'm pretty damn happy with that. But if he's the first, I'm not really that thrilled by it. But if I have to choose between Derek White or Trae Young to be my first guy, that's a pretty easy choice. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like, trying to hit 150k subs. We're like 5k away from that, so seriously, if we could get to that finish line, I would really appreciate it. Also, go ahead and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. As you can tell, I am recording this from home as I am dealing with a little bit of tummy troubles, and I am being brave about it and recording a video, so you should drop a like for my troubles. But yeah, it's just hot takes. You know the drill. We're a day late because of, again, tummy troubles, but let's get into it. From Matt Evil, people get upset over SGA wanting to be better than Kobe, need to get over themselves. Aside from the fact that it's a worthy goal for SGA to have, I actually think that it is a reasonable goal for him, all things considered. He still has a long way to go, but he just had a better single season than any individual guard other than MJ. And unlike Kobe, He will not spend his peak years on a bad team, allowing him to score at a high level without having to carry bums to a first-round elimination. I actually think while still needing to prove it, Giannis, SGA, and Jokic all have top 10 all-time ceilings in my opinion, with Jokic being the closest and most realistic. Well, I do think you are not wrong about this year's SGA season being a little bit better than any of the peak Kobe seasons, because what SGA has that Kobe doesn't is his peak of his scoring also correlated with him winning a championship, where Kobe's best scoring years were some of his worst success years, and some of his most successful years were not as great in the scoring department. Meanwhile, SGA just won the damn scoring title while winning MVP, while making first team, all of that. And the Thunder won 68 games, won the title, and he averaged 30 on the way there, so a little bit worse than his regular season average, but even still, like, it's very rare. I highlighted this recently in my 93 finals videos about MJ. It's not an easy feat to win the scoring title and win the championship. In fact, the only players who have ever done that is Kareem, Shaq, I think that's it, and then 6 times Michael Jordan, and then Shea. Like, it's just not a thing that you can do. So to do this at the age of 26, when he has his whole career ahead of him and he's going to have great help around him for basically his entire career, like, if you're trying to be better than Kobe, this is a very, very, very good starting point. Now, where people are going to disagree is they think he's a free throw merchant and all that bullshit, but like, argue about the semantics of how the free throws are gained however you want to. Kobe shot more free throws in his seasons where he averaged 30 plus than Shea did. Like, let me go pull that up real quick. Yeah, so looking at Kobe's only 3 times that he's averaged 30. Also worth mentioning, Shea has already averaged 33 times. Again, context of the era. I don't know if I said it already, but context of the era is very important in scoring, so it's not a one-to-one thing. But worth mentioning, if we're making it simple, this one season where he averaged 30 in 2003, he attempted 0.1 less free throws. Other than that, it's 10. I don't want to get into a whole free throw conversation right now, but that seems inevitable whenever talking about Shea. But like, yeah, dude, this is a really fucking great start if you want to be better than Kobe. Like, a lot of people are going to be upset about that. I don't really care. The numbers are in. I think he's a comparable enough player to a peak Kobe. I would still say peak Kobe's a little bit better, but I'm probably also saying that just because he has the seniority. And like, if 10 years from now that started to become more of a conversation and it was like a lot of people leaning towards Shea, I would completely understand that. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. So I think that's a reasonable take. And also, if you're getting mad at him for saying that he wants to be better than Kobe, that's stupid. That's exactly what Kobe would want. That's the type of energy that Kobe very much encouraged in younger players. And I don't know. I think it's just because people hate on him. Like, when it's a player that you like, then it's a cool thing to do. Like, I saw this clip. It was this is not the NBA, but Baker Mayfield was talking about how he went from being like cocky, quote unquote, to like a dog. It's all about perception. It's all about whether or not this player is living up to expectations, and then whether or not they're well liked. And Shea isn't all that well liked that much, so people are gonna give him shit for saying something that other people are gonna give them praise for. Like, fucking Manas Buzelis said that he wanted to be the best player ever, with nowhere near the foundation that Shea has to say some shit like that. He said that coming off of a rookie year, but when he does it, it's cool to have that confidence. It's a sign that he's gonna be a killer one day. But when Shea does it, you will never be my GOAT. You pussy, you free throw merchant. Yeah, it's whack. I hate that. I hate that a lot, and I think you were completely right, Matt. From Sports and Shorts, this year's top 10 will be the greatest of all time. Some combination of Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Shea, Wemby, Cade, Paulo, Durant, Curry, LeBron, Booker, Trae Young, Edwards, or Brunson. I can guarantee that Cade, Paulo, Trae, and Curry will all have a bump in efficiency. I will bet my life on it. Okay, we got to come back to that. We got to see if we have to take this man's life I will also bet my life that Booker will go back to pre-Durant trade numbers, maybe with a little bit lower efficiency. And I don't know if this is controversial. Maybe this is a hot take inside of a hot take, but LeBron will be the worst player on that list I gave, not because he will be bad, but his 24, 7, and 7 on 60% true shooting will not be good enough to match the rest of that list. Yeah, LeBron is just like kind of getting a little bit worse every year, and that's fine. It's reasonable. He's 41. I hate even mentioning it because I don't know why it should be controversial to be like, yeah, 41-year-old's not quite as good as he was when he was 35, but that's just kind of the way that it is sometimes. But yeah, I mean, this is a very strong top 10. I agree with you. I'm trying to think. There were a couple of years in the 90s and then a couple of years in the 2000s where the top 10 players in the league was just absolutely fucking bonkers. I don't know. Maybe I think like 2004-ish would be a good time. Let me just look up the 2004 All NBA teams. Okay, 2004. We're just gonna do the top 10. Shaq, Duncan, KG, Kobe, Kidd, Ben Wallace, Jermaine O'Neal, Peja, Sam Cassell. Yeah, that's not as great. Tracy McGrady. Yeah, we could probably do better than that. Oh, even this next year is better. Shaq, Duncan, Dirk, Iverson, Nash, Amari, Garnett, LeBron, Ray Allen, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, Gilbert Arenas, Tracy. God damn. 2005. Yeah, this seems like the right-ish area. The 2005 to like 2010 had some of the better top 10 players in the league. And then you go to like, let's go to 1991 even. Gross, Karl Malone, but David Robinson, Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Clyde Dominique Mullen, Ewing, Elijah Wan. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting video concept. I wonder if there's anyone who actually has a comprehensive list of like what are the peak best 10 players in the league ever. But I do think that this year has good potential. I don't think that's an unreasonable take. Something that I've argued about the NBA for a while now is that like the 10-ish best players in the NBA isn't that much better than the 10-ish best players in the 2000s or the 90s. However, the players after the top 10 are just so much better than they used to be. Like the 12th best player in today's NBA could be the 10th best, or could be a top 10 player a decade ago. Some shit like that. Like the bottom of the totem pole has gotten so much better. So it means the top of the totem pole actually doesn't matter as much. But in terms of the actual talent, like Giannis, Shea, Jokic, Luka, Wemby, if that ends up being the top 5 this year, which I think it will, that's a fucking crazy top 5 players in the league. That is one of the greatest top 5 players list ever. Also, what a remarkably fun lineup that would be. But yeah, Joel Embiid also just played in the preseason. Maybe he gets into that conversation because he looks really damn good, but that's a topic for probably Monday on Little Rusty. This is a take that I'm only highlighting because it annoys me from the USAID? I don't know. Well, Tim Duncan being a center, yes, Giannis is the best power forward on both sides of the floor ever. I really hate when people argue about the player positions are when they were literally listed at a position. You can argue Tim Duncan's a center all you like. You can argue that the Spurs played their best when Tim Duncan was playing the center position. I agree with that. You know why that is? Because double bigs is traditionally not actually a good idea, especially if you're running a complete offensive novice alongside Tim Duncan, which the Spurs consistently did. However, Duncan spent his best years at the power forward position primarily undeniably. Like the years where he starts getting listed at center is in the latter half of his career. Look at this. Stupid fucking ad. Fuck you and your fucking ad. Power forward all the way through these peak years. Let's actually look at what his numbers look like at power forward versus center. I recognize he still played a good amount of time at center during this era, but he is listed at power forward primarily because he played that position primarily. That is tracking data. That is not just vibes. He played power forward. It's not just who he started with either. He mostly played power forward. 22, 12, 3 assists, 2.5 blocks, about 51% on his two-pointers. 2 MVPs in that span as well. And then the center position, whopping 16 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks. Still good, especially for how fucking old he was in that run. But like, Tim Duncan's a power forward. Shut up. I hate that. Stop it. I believe this is vaguely in reference to a take that I made on the last hot takes, because I think I mentioned not being as high on Anthony Edwards' ceiling as a lot of people are. And that's not even because I'm not high on his ceiling, but there's a lot of people who genuinely think he might be the second coming of Michael Jordan and that he will one day be the best player in the league. I don't see that happening. I don't think Ant will be the best player in the league at any point in his career. I think I said something along those lines. So I think this is a follow-up, but it's from Riley Hop. Anthony Edwards' ceiling is often very overstated. People like to think he'll win an MVP, and many think that he's the future of the league, yet I simply can't see that. I don't think he'll ever be on the level of MJ or Kobe, where they're only shooting guards what are the only shooting guards you can say that about? Oh, okay. They're not on their level because those are the only shooting guards you can say were ever the best in the league. Yeah, that's fair. I see him in the same class as Tatum, a guy who will consistently be the 5th to 8th best player in the world, is capable of being the best player on a championship team, but will never be viewed as that guy when it comes to players that make a difference. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I absolutely think that Ant will probably be around a Jason Tatum level, which is not an insult. But as this says, like, yeah, you will be a superstar. You will be in the top 10 perennially. You will be good enough to be the best guy on a championship team. But number 1, number 2, number 3 in this economy, I don't know about that. Now, something that is highlighted that I appreciate in here that should be mentioned, I don't know who commented it. I'm not actually going to differentiate it between it. But like, he has consistently gotten better every single year. At a certain point, that doesn't keep happening. I don't remember the exact order of operations here, but I believe it was like his mid-range stats improved a bunch one year. Then his playmaking, decision-making got a lot better the next year. And then his three-point shooting took a massive leap. And like a really massive leap relative to like just that big of a difference. Like he had one of the highest 3-point make seasons of all time after being like a pretty good 3-point shooter, but not a really special one. So he did that. He took that kind of a leap. So that definitely stands to reason that he can continue to improve. But I still think he's quite a way away from like Shea. He's quite a way away from Jokic and Giannis for sure. Quite a way away from Luka. Like, I just don't know that there is enough there in terms of his playmaking. I can't say that he's peaked. I think it's a little short-sighted to say that he has gotten there, like he's done getting better. That's not true. But there is still such a gap between him and the best player in the league that I'm like, I just don't know that you can make up for that distance. Maybe, still possible. He's still young, but I don't know. I don't know about that. This is from Young Mellow. If scoring gravity is such a huge factor in playmaking, then why is Magic considered the best playmaker? He doesn't have the scoring gravity anywhere close to LeBron or Jokic, while those two are just as good passers as Magic. That's not true. I feel like Magic is only considered the best playmaker because he had the ball more than Jokic and Braun, who play center and small forward. I'm going to have to disagree with you there, and I would say go watch Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson could have scored 4, 5, 6, 7 more points per game in his career than he did. But he was just like, yeah, I'm passing pilled. I'm the playmaker guy. I dime up my teammates. I love that. However, when Magic Johnson is running down the fast break as a 6'9" guard, which was never really seen at that time before, having some of the best handle in the NBA, being one of the quickest players in the NBA despite being that size, he absolutely had a shitload of scoring gravity. Now, Magic's best asset was when he was on the fast break. If Magic's on the fast break and he has guys running with him, there is almost nothing you can do. Because if he chooses to take it himself, very hard to stop. If you try to stop him, he's going to do some ridiculous whip it behind his head through his balls type shit. Like whatever the fuck you can even think of, he's going to do that. Magic had a ton of scoring gravity. I recognize that he only scores 20 points per game for his career, but it was almost all right at the rim, and it was mostly like fast break offense. Like, if you want to be like his half court offense wasn't good enough, I would wager, I would say Magic isn't the best half court playmaker ever. Honestly, I'd probably give that title to Jokic. Just because he doesn't score 28 per game or 26 per game doesn't mean that he doesn't have scoring gravity, doesn't mean that defenses are not terrified of him himself taking it all the way, because he absolutely did that all the time. Not to mention, he's a 6'9" point guard. And I actually recently watched the 87 finals. I watched the 84 finals earlier in this summer. For some reason, teams really do not change their positional defender regardless of the matchup back then. Like, a lot of the time, he was being checked by 6'1" Dennis Johnson. And Dennis Johnson was a good defender for his size, but give me a break. The amount of times this man was scoring hook shots over him because they just did not recognize that they should put a taller defender on him was absolutely baffling to me. But at the same time, the taller defenders that they had did not have nearly the speed of Magic. Like, you could say, oh, Larry Bird was a pretty good defender and he's a little bit bigger than Magic, so why don't you throw Bird on Magic? Well, because Magic's going to blow by Larry Bird every fucking time. So, like, I think the difference here is Magic just emphasized playmaking more than Jokic and LeBron, where Jokic, or at least LeBron, is still more score first than pass first. Jokic is probably the closest to 50-50 between these three. He's probably the happy medium, but like, do not get it twisted. Magic Johnson could score the hell out of the ball. In fact, the 1987 finals that I watched, that season, he led the team in scoring. He was the #1 scorer on that team during the regular season, and he was the #1 scorer on that team in the finals. Yeah, he averaged 24 points per game this year, along with his 12.2 assists, 1 MVP. Playoff run, same type numbers. Well, there's 22 there, but then you go to that finals. Where we at? We go to that finals. Magic takes and makes more shots than anybody else, averages 26 and 13. Dude, Magic could score the ball really, really well. He just was such a prolific, high volume playmaker. He was so good at that it was secondary to his playmaking. But don't get that shit twisted, please. From K Send X, OKC's impact on the future of NBA team building is massive and will last much longer than Golden State's impact on team building. I have to disagree with you on that, just because the foundation of OKC's rebuild was two absolutely massive trade packages, absolutely massive hauls. The Paul George trade is obviously #1 on that list, but the Russell Westbrook trade also got a shitload of capital. Don't get me wrong, I do think teams will try to take a similar approach of like, yeah, let's stack our draft capital chest and then go from there. But that's easier said than done. Also, I do think that NBA teams are now becoming, and rightfully so, a little bit more hesitant to just trade the farm for one player. Like, that has been something that has been happening less and less. Obviously, Kevin Durant is much older, so that is a factor in it. But like, I think the difference that you saw between the Kevin Durant trade to Phoenix versus Houston is a pretty damn massive signifier of just how much the tides have turned in terms of teams giving away assets of that scale. I mean, the Knicks still did it for Mikal Bridges, so like, it is definitely within the realm of possibility to happen again. But I just don't know that many other teams will be able to land such massive home runs again. And I think in terms of the way that the Warriors did it through archetypes of players, through a type of play style that has now become so popularized that like every team in the league is trying to draft Stephen Curry's and Draymond Green's and Klay Thompson's. So I don't know. I do think the Warriors model will still make more sense in the end. From old school handles, rebounding has become one of the most underrated parts of the modern game. Everyone's obsessed with shooting, pacing, and playmaking, but grabbing boards still wins possessions. When point guards like Luka Doncic are averaging 8+ rebounds a night, that's not just padding stats, that's real impact. Securing the ball, starting a fast break, and controlling tempo from the glass is insanely valuable. We need to start giving rebounding the respect it deserves again. I think the thing with rebounding is like the difference between the best rebounding team in the league and the worst rebounding team in the league is not actually that substantial, where the difference between the best defensive team, the best space team, the best shooting team, those differences are very massive, very tangible. If you actually look the last couple of years, some of the best championship teams or some of the more recent championship teams, they're better at rebounding than not, but it's not strictly like a super big definer of success. Let's look at some per game stats here. Total rebounds. Like, yeah, the Memphis Grizzlies, second best rebounding team in the league, despite the fact that they have Jaren Jackson Jr. at the helm. But like, you can get some pretty mid teams up here. Like, yeah, the Jazz, one of the best rebounding teams in the league. The Hornets, one of the best rebounders. The Raptors. Like, you see the OKC Thunder here. They're what? 11th. Like, still good at it, but you really don't have to be great at it. And the difference between the worst rebounding team in the league and the best is 8 rebounds, which is 2 rebounds a quarter. Like, does it really check out to be that crazy substantial? That's why I also like think that people freak out about free throw attempts too much. Like, burst in free throw attempts and a bottom in free throw attempts is a difference of 4 per game, 1 per quarter. And like we got OKC here at 11. Let's go last year. Let's see how good the Celtics were at rebounding. Total rebounds, they were number 2. Hey, got that one. And that makes sense. They got a lot of big wings. I really need to get the paid version of this shit. Total rebounds. This is 2023, so it would have been the Nuggets. The Nuggets I actually thought the Nuggets were a better rebounding team than this. Yeah, 18. I'm surprised by that. I actually thought they were better at rebounding than that. 2022, Golden State Warriors. I'm willing to bet they're probably not super high on that list. Oh, well, they still managed to be top 10. So, hey, there's something. I think the Bucks are a pretty damn good rebounding team with Giannis there. Yeah, they might lead the league. No, they're second. So, yeah, I mean, you can't completely ignore rebounding. The Lakers are probably up there as well. Yeah, they are number 9. You can't ignore it. You still need to be good at it. But again, the difference between being good at it and bad at it is not as massive as it was. And the real reason for that is 3-point shooting. Because the longer the average shot is, the longer the average rebound is. Long shots mean long rebounds, which absolutely undermines the necessity of like a major rebounding presence under the rim. Because like that's part of the reason that you see guards averaging more rebounds than they ever have before. It's because there's a lot more long rebounds to be grabbed. So like, yeah, I can agree that it's still underrated just because it's very rarely emphasized anymore. But I also think that's for pretty good reason. All right, this will be the last one. Players having a clutch gene is the most overused and misused argument for a player's greatness, mainly because people don't even really know what the criteria of being clutch actually is. In theory, a player making a pass to a wide-open teammate in the clutch and that player making that shot should have the same value in terms of being clutch as the passer made the right play and the shooter hit the shot. But fans give way more credit to the person making the shot while actually giving anti-credit to the passer for passing the ball. And then there are factors like, is this more clutch to have a clutch series or a clutch game or a clutch single moment? The criteria makes no sense to me and shouldn't be as big of a talking point as it is. There's a old ruling, court ruling. I believe it was the Supreme Court, but I don't know. I learned this a long time ago. But it was like a ruling on defining porn. And the ruling was like, you'll know it when you see it. I feel like clutchness is that at this point. There's really no way to definitively lock in like this is not. Where are the lines drawn in the sand for what clutchness is? It's kind of just like a spiritual, immeasurable thing. And for that reason, I think it should be brought up far less than it is because there's really no definitive answer to a lot of these things, even if there are different stats that you want to point to as like, the definitive stat, no one agrees on that. Like I mentioned this, like the Kobe being clutcher than LeBron thing. I'm like, well, if you look at end of game shots, if you look at shots in the last 2 minutes of the game, LeBron is overwhelmingly way, way more efficient than Kobe. But people don't want to hear that stat because there's other ways of being clutch. And like, I understand that. But for me, for that reason, I feel like it just shouldn't be in the conversation at all. Also, not to mention, I feel like it's just overemphasized purely because the best players don't even really need to be clutch that often. Like, if you're a dominant player and you're in the most winnings, like ideal winning scenario, like you should be blowing teams the fuck out. Like Stephen Curry ain't gonna win Clutch Player of the Year in 2016 when his team is the game is over by the fourth quarter, but he will win it like a year or two ago when he won it because his team's more in the middle and there are closer and closer games all the time. So it's like, I mean, the most dominant best players, clutchness isn't even really strictly a sign of their greatness because they're in such good winning situations so consistently that they don't even have that many opportunities to need to be clutch. The other thing is like, and this is an argument I made against Russell Westbrook all the time because people argue that Russell Westbrook is clutch. I disagree. I'm not trying to kick him while he's down. RIP going to Sacramento, but like, the way that this man would make like 5 mistakes that would be the reason his team was down in the first place, and then he would hit a game-winning shot. I'm like, you could call that clutch, or you could call it saving your ass from a disastrous fourth quarter, and now the only memory that exists is the game winner and not all the fuck-ups you did before it. I think it's dumb. I think it's oversimplified, and I think it's annoying. So yes, I do agree 100% with you. To my fellow Jacob Duncan, good one. But yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Goddamn, the season's finally here. It'll be here in 2 days. I am so excited. I hope you are too. We're gonna try to cover this game as extensively as we ever have this year. Go check out Little Rusty Buckets if you have not already, because there's a lot of content coming out over there. But that is it. Goodbye.